What's up, guys? You guys are listening to the Zack Scriven podcast, and in today's final episode of Automation Month 2019, we have the headliner, the one, the only, manufacturing all-star, Chris Luecke. So Chris Luecke is a media maverick. He works for Rockwell Automation as a account executive. So he not only is aware and in touch with the solutions that he is helping his customers digitally transform, helping them connect their enterprises, but also is a media maverick. So he has a show, Pubcast Worldwide. He also has a show within the industrial automation space, Manufacturing Happy Hour. So it was really awesome to be able to talk to him about Rockwell solutions, working at Rockwell, but also doing content and digital media, digital content creation, which we have a shared interest in. So it was really awesome. But I first wanted to say thank you to today's sponsor, which is 4.0 Solutions. Actually, they're the sponsor of all of Automation Month, and what we're doing is highlighting a different best-in-class product. So today's best-in-class product is best-in-class PLC integrated development environment. It's Wonderlogix Studio. So Wonderlogix is the world's first drag-and-drop intuitive designer for PLC. But not only that, it can actually generate code for Rockwell PLCs as well as Siemens now, Siemens 7, with their TIA portal platform. So you can now generate one PLC code that outputs to Rockwell and Siemens PLCs. There's never been a product like that before. So it's perfect if you're a system integrator, perfect if you're an end user, or if you're an OEM as well too. I mean, really, you guys should be checking out Wonderlogix. If you guys have not heard of them yet, where have you guys been? So anyways, we are affiliates with Wonderlogix Studio. So if you guys sign up using the link in the video description, you have 180 days to try out the platform before making a decision to purchase. If you do purchase within that 180 days and you sign up using the link in the video description, we will get a commission for that sale, and it will help fund this content and make this content more possible, which is really what we want to do. We want to create more content. We want to get you guys creating more content. And 4.0 Solutions and Walker and Intellic, they have funded a lot of this content, and it's now just getting to the point where we're reaching back out to our network to help, reaching out to you guys, reaching out to the vendors, and seeing how we can help fund further content and make more of this stuff possible to help drive the industry forward from Industry 3.0 to Industry 4.0. So anyways, thank you 4.0 Solutions, thank you Walker, thank you Chris Luecke for being on the podcast, thank you listeners, and that's going to wrap it up for Automation Month 2019. Enjoy the podcast.
I can hear you now. How do I sound?
You sound good, man. All right,
okay,
that's
cool.
Perfect.
All right. Sorry about that.
No problem.
All right, we're in business now. Let me just make sure I got the right backdrop with all the beer cans and all that fun stuff.
I was going to say, are we on the set of the Pubcast Worldwide set?
Well, I don't really have a set for Pubcast Worldwide. I've got one for Manufacturing Happy Hour in the lab when I guess we're on our home turf, but this is just the decorative nature of my home office at this point.
Very nice. Dude, so let's hear more about the Pubcast Worldwide. You're speaking at Podfest coming here this month, right?
Yeah, man, it's actually this week. So in a couple of days, I'll be heading to Orlando, where I'll be giving a talk that I'll be giving for the second time called How to Create the Perfect Mobile Recording Studio and Travel the World with Your Podcast. So it's a pretty hands-on, not too overly technical of a session. I basically talk about what I've learned through my experiences so far, traveling around the world with a mobile podcasting rig, because, there are two things I try to get across during this presentation, where it's like, one, if you want to get started on a podcast and you're thinking about doing a mobile setup, there are very cheap ways to do this. You can just get a couple USB microphones and hook it up to your laptop, and then you're in business. And that's like an investment of maybe $40, assuming you already have a laptop. And the second thing I go into in the bulk of the presentation is really more around, how do you advance your craft? What's like a nice, professional mobile audio setup using like a Zoom H6 recorder, which if anyone's not familiar with podcasting, it's kind of an industry standard recorder. Making sure you've got some quality microphones that reduce some of the background noise, especially like me if you're recording in bars. And then also just some considerations and strategies when you're trying to find an ideal recording environment when it might not be the quietest spot in the world, like a bar or brewery. So anyway, so yeah, coming up here, I guess this will be out after I've already done that, if I had to assume. But Pubcast Worldwide's traveling around, just got back from Japan. So that's kind of the beer side of everything that I do, since there's that. And then manufacturing happy hour, like we've talked about before.
Yeah, of course. And we're going to talk about manufacturing happy hour. And I just thought I'd bring that up. And so this is Automation Month. All these episodes are going to be released in May, but I might post a clip, beforehand. Cool. I've had so many guests up to date, and I've only been able to get out so many clips, especially due to I'm being very swamped right now with putting out my first digital course, which should be also out by the time this airs.
Nice.
crushlinkedinvideo.com. And, it's just everything I've learned in the last year, kind of in a similar way, but packaged into a digital course of using LinkedIn video to travel to places like South Africa, where I'm going to in 2 weeks. And, I was at Philadelphia Automation Fair.
Yeah.
Pretty much every major place I've been going to. My goal is to go to all 7 continents. So that should be by 2020. I should hit, Antarctica and seal the deal. So
nice. Yeah, I'm trying to snowboard on all 7 continents. So
damn.
I've been to 5 continents. I've snowboarded on 3 of them. I'm hoping to knock out at least 2 more on the slopes in the southern hemisphere. Maybe one this year, maybe both this year. Hard to say. So it's about building up that life resume.
I want to do Akagonia. That would be cool.
Yeah. So you've been doing a lot of exciting things, because it's probably been almost maybe 9 months or so since we talked on the show the first time. So it's been, you and I have a bit of activity going on in between then and now.
Yeah, definitely. So, the point of this podcast was to, we had talked about, how you've been able to build a personal brand from within a company. And so I guess in some senses, we would kind of look at it from the show Manufacturing Happy Hour that you've built. But also, it's, you're kind of doing double duty, building two shows. So which one, how does that work? So when you went to Japan, was there a Rockwell incentive to go there, or did you just, travel on your own accord and work remotely, or?
Yeah, so most of that was combination vacation and, working on my own. A lot of that wasn't associated with Rockwell. I was throwing in vacation days for that. Now, the reality is the lines of my life, and I think this happens when anyone starts going on a creative endeavor that, blends with professional endeavors. Those lines between what's my day job and what's my life outside of that are starting to blur quite a bit. One of the things I did when I got to Tokyo was there is a group called Venture Cafe. And it's basically, there are about 10 cities around the world that have these innovation communities, as they call them. And it's run by the Cambridge Institute. And it's really meant to bring innovators, startups, professionals at technology companies together to share ideas. And the type of cities that are targets for these can vary, but for example, it wouldn't be something that would be like where I am in the Bay Area, because there's already, more than enough innovation communities here. It's spots like Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, or St. Louis, Missouri, where you have some of these more up and coming Rust Belty startup towns, or in the case of Tokyo, Japan, where I was, and I was talking to the leader of Venture Cafe there, he's like, the reason we have one here is in Japan, there's not necessarily that natural collaboration that you get, let's say, in the United States. So it's really, kind of changing some of the cultural norms, or, doing things that people aren't typically used to, bringing people together from different companies, different startups to really synergize and share those type of ideas in that environment. So the reason I bring that story up is I got to meet a number of people that were either studying in Japan, doing startups in Japan, working for large technology companies in Japan. I got to connect with those individuals because honestly, Zach, that's just what I like to do now. I love finding those groups of creative individuals, learning from them, building the network, and just finding, learning about what they're doing and finding if there are ways we can help one another down the line. Because I think you and I have talked about it before. I'm a long game type guy. I'm not looking on, it returns in the next year, 2 years. Granted, I do that from a sales perspective, but I'm really looking at building like an amazing, fulfilling, lifelong career where I get to interact with folks around the world.
Yeah, that's dope. Dude, so have you been to China as well too?
I've connected through Beijing before. I have not spent any time in China. This was actually only my second time to Japan. I'm sorry, my second time to Asia. I've been to Southeast Asia before, been to Myanmar, been to Thailand, but honestly, I haven't spent a ton of time over there, and I partially blame that on having lived in Houston for a while, where I had a direct flight to most spots down in South America. So that was distracting me until I moved out west, where all of a sudden Asia was a bit more open for exploration.
Interesting. Yeah, I've been to, technically Asia is Dubai is part of Asia, but I don't know. I kind of want to go to like China and just officially go to Asia. And then I have to hit up South America, which American has direct flights from LAX to like Sao Paulo. So I might go there just for like a weekend or something.
Yeah.
And then I think, so let's see, Europe, North America, South America, Australia, Europe, Africa, Asia, and then Antarctica. So that's pretty nuts.
Yeah, because you and I both, I think you were in Australia. I was in Australia last year. I mean, I've done Europe a long time ago. Yeah, it's hard to keep track of where we both are in the global automation, technology, or just travel spectrum in general.
Dude, so I saw this video. This guy skied down from the summit of K2.
Oh, geez. Yeah. See, so that's not on my bucket list. I don't think I'm going to be able to pull that off anytime soon. If I can just get on a hill and board my way down, I count that as an accomplishment.
Yeah. I think I would want to do the 7 summits, but I don't think I would want to do like all 8,000 meter peaks. That's pretty much like you got to be dedicated to mountain climbing your whole life to do that.
Yeah.
And also be, genetically gifted with like large lungs and, high blood capacity and all that kind of, it's crazy. But I could see myself doing Everest, on an expedition and, doing some videos. Like, imagine how sick that would be, man.
Yeah, I mean, I do want to get more into mountaineering at some point and like do some of that. I just feel like, I mean, we talked about at the start of the show, like I've got 2 video series right now. I'm already doing some other traveling. I'm big into snowboarding. So it's like my bandwidth is like maxed out at this point in time. So incorporate other hobbies. Maybe I'll start golfing again at some point. But right now it's a big focus around all the content and all the media for sure.
So since we last talked, how has your show progressed and advanced, like gear-wise, workflow-wise, community-wise?
Yeah, so I was thinking about this before we jumped on the show, and there are really 3 things I'll probably highlight that have changed. In addition to general metrics like audience growth, that's more than doubled since then. My videos are getting in the tens of thousands of views now versus like the hundreds or just thousands, depending on the video. I'm not going to say everything's a viral sensation, but when you dress up as Bill Lumbergh from Office Space for Halloween, that can give you a bit of a kick in your viewership. But aside from those metrics, I think the 3 biggest things that have changed since we last talked are we're expanding both the in-person and online community associated with manufacturing happy hour. So I think my term. I call people manufacturing all-stars, anyone that's doing something innovative in the manufacturing space. And seeing the type of engagement I was getting in the comments on the videos online, I'm like, we really got to start upping our game in terms of what this community looks like, both in person and online. So we just did our first, what I'm calling a Manufacturing All-Stars dinner series, where we pull together executives, young career talent, anyone that's really taking a progressive approach to technology, their careers, their company, bringing them together for dinner. We're still trying to figure out the frequency, once a month, every other month, something along those lines, to share ideas. And just so it's not a self-curated thing, whenever I do one of those events, I tell everyone, all right, you got to bring a friend, like someone else that you consider to be a manufacturing all-star in your network, preferably someone I've never met before, to really help pull people together, not just from my network, but other networks who, in the same token we were talking about earlier, where it's like playing the long game, people that might be an asset to you or helpful to you, or even just, a friendly connection to you somewhere down the line in your career. So we're building that in-person community, and I'm also building the online community as well, where it's been just kind of ad hoc, people who are subscribed to the videos, commenting on the videos. We're building up a legitimate industry community now, where we are pulling together folks from, this doesn't have to just be a local thing that's limited to my geography here in the Bay Area. This is manufacturing all-stars from around the world that we're going to bring online to share ideas. One thing I'm going to do to start is, featuring a manufacturing all-star of the week or a spotlight, just to highlight the cool things people are doing, whether that's a new project that they've executed on a new company. So I'll be doing quite a bit of that. Then finally, the last piece of the puzzle, and this is by the time this comes out in May, it's going to be around the release of this. I am going to do a longer form audio podcast associated with Manufacturing Happy Hour. For those not familiar with Manufacturing Happy Hour, it's like a short form video series that covers technical topics, issues impacting the manufacturing industry, but typically 3 to 5 minutes. There's only so much information you can get across during that time. So I'm really going to focus on a podcast to really do kind of the inverse of that, longer form content, 20 to 40 minutes probably, where we interview, an executive, an innovator, someone that's created a startup, anyone that's got a good story to tell in the industry, to really put some stories behind what's going on in manufacturing, what's going on behind the skills gap in the workforce, what's going on behind companies that are truly executing on an Internet of Things strategy. I want to start putting together some case studies and stories around that, because quite frankly, those can be more memorable than just talking about the bits and bytes that go into a video. So the long story short, Zach, there's been a lot going on with the show since we last talked. So I'm excited to see some of these things already come into fruition, and then seeing what some of these next ones look like in the coming months as well.
Dude, that's huge, man. We need more content. And speaking of the community, like, have you gotten Derek Stickle on the Manufacturing Happy Hour or the podcast?
I'd love to have him on. I need to get Derek, and I have been chatting for probably a year about doing it, because we just got to end up in the same spot at the right time, because we're on opposite coasts. Derek's a go-getter. For anyone who doesn't know him, he runs, it's a systems integrator, right? That he runs, if I'm thinking of this.
Yeah, ACT Automated Control Technologies, and then he's also a vice president of another company. I think he has 3 or 4 companies.
Exactly. He's a busy guy. So when we've talked about meeting up at trade shows and whatnot, he's like, dude, I'm sorry, I've got 2 projects for that I've got deadlines on that I've got.
It'd be funny. It's he's let's say he's just working in a panel, and we're just reporters trying to interview him, and he's just all right, that he's kind of built his personal brand around just always being busy, always working, and people, it's kind of polarizing, but that's what's good about building your own brand is the more polarizing you can be, the more you can kind of take a stance that's kind of different. People will kind of either go away or they'll track to that,
Yeah. Oh, for sure. Yeah. You can't appeal to everyone. At the end of the day, I'm sure you and I don't appeal to everyone, but we've got our niche audience, and, Derek has done an excellent job of building up a dedicated following, and really he's not doing a podcast or anything. He's just posting the day-to-day content of what he's doing out in the field, whether it's, getting a can line up and running or trying to meet a project deadline. It's really just sharing the day to day. So, when it comes to just general content strategy, sometimes you just need to keep it simple and highlight what you're doing in your normal daily work life. And you can build a lot of interest just around that. So shout out to Derek. He's certainly a manufacturing all-star. There ever was an epitome of one. And hopefully you and I will both get to talk to him at some point.
Yes. Derek, shout out. We got to get you on the podcast. And, I can definitely relate, from the work that I do that, sometimes it can take over my life and, affect my relationship with my daughter and my fiance. And, so I think that's why I also resonate with that content as well, too, because it's good to keep it in balance as well.
Yep. No, totally agree. I didn't share this when I was going through kind of the life updates, but I have been trying to keep my personal life in a bit more balance as well, too. Because, life ebbs and flows. There are busy seasons, there are less busy seasons. So, I was thinking about it. It's just like, I need time to disconnect also and just like turn off social media for the weekend, ignore LinkedIn for a couple days and just focus on like my relationships with friends and family here in the Bay Area, wherever it may be. So yeah, there's a balancing act for sure that we're all trying to play.
That's huge, man. So, yeah, LinkedIn's been really huge. I think that the podcast will work out really well for you because then, it's kind of like a funnel. You can get micro content from that. I mean, the 3 to 5 minute video that you pretty much already are doing, you'll be able to do that plus then expound upon it and then talk about stories. So then people that are interested in that one bit, they can get that. Or if they want to dive deeper, now they have more content to consume. And yeah, I think you'll find it to be really successful. The content that I create with Walker, we do these whiteboard series, which is kind of more focused on a particular point. And then after that, we've like the last 2 months, we've done just a free form podcast where we just sit down at a table and we just chat. And that has actually, we've almost gotten as much content from that as, the 5 or 6 just topic videos. So.
Oh, for sure. Like especially in the manufacturing sector, the one thing I've been kind of kicking myself for not starting earlier is the podcast, because it's like, one thing that most people that work in manufacturing have in common is that they have a commute every day. It's not like an industry of digital nomads where they don't have a commute. And that's, let's be honest, one of your biggest targets for a podcasting audience or an audio audience. So it's like, there's an audience there, and I'll also be able to, take the experiences I've done from and apply it to manufacturing happy hour. So it won't be like something that's totally new for me. So it'll be new territory for this show, but for me itself, it'll be, I've got some experience behind it.
Yeah, I'll have to check it out. I listened to like the CSIA podcast, which actually, by the way, now Tony Verhoeven used to host that. Now I think he's moved, like they're no longer working with the CSIA.
I was wondering about that because that was like one of the like industry podcasts out there, and it kind of just like tapered off from what I gathered.
Yeah. So, oh my gosh, I started playing. I pulled up our episode. I was gonna check it out. It has a grand total of 19 views. So not my most popular podcast, but
it's okay, man. I will make sure we at least we will like not only double the numbers on this one. Let's see if we can't 100x them this time. How about that?
Yeah, that would be sick. Yeah. So like the podcast I did with Walker, that one got like 200 views this last month. So
awesome.
But those are filmed in person, so there's something to be said about having like a better, audio and visual system.
Yeah, I'm still gonna try to do as much as I can in person. You've probably picked it up from the video series and from the Pubcast. Like I do find value in being across the table from someone, and being able to sit there. Now that said, I need to get more flexible with that. Miss out on opportunities like, what you and I are doing right now, where it's, 9:00 on a Monday morning and we're knocking this out, even though, I think you're down in like LA area right now and I'm up here in San Francisco. But, it's these type of things that allow us to still create content, still create, have a meaningful conversation, even if we're, 500 something miles apart.
Yeah. I say that the audio connection, the latency is much lower this year than it was last year. Last year I was using Appear.in.
Okay.
And, but that's not to say Zoom hasn't been perfect either.
Sure.
Especially when I'm talking to people like on the other side of the coast or other side of the world, like there's a lag where sometimes I'll stop talking and then start talking and they'll start talking over me. Like it'll be hard to, but like it seems like right now the latency is pretty good enough where we can just kind of maintain a natural conversation.
Yeah, you sound great today, Zach. This has been going well.
Dope. So podcast. Yeah. So what else is in store for manufacturing happy hour? Are you looking at getting a LinkedIn page and starting posting more content over there, or?
So actually, that was my weekend project. This is literally like hot off the presses of coming up with which honestly, Zach, I just put it off for too long. Like creating the LinkedIn page and then the manufacturing happy hour industry community took all of like an hour, couple hours this weekend to knock out. So yeah, if anyone's listening, you can find Manufacturing Happy Hour on LinkedIn right now. Just search it, Manufacturing Happy Hour. And the group is relatively small for it right now. I wanted to keep it to like an initial pilot group of, industry all-stars that can kind of say, hey, this is what our industry is lacking right now. This is what we need from an online community. And as we kind of get that honed in on, start opening it up to a bunch of other people. But if you haven't seen it, Zach, I think you've got an invitation in your LinkedIn inbox for it.
Yeah, I just saw that.
I was going to say, I wouldn't have left you off there.
Dope, man. Thank you. I kind of actually prefer the term manufacturing rock star, but all-star is cool.
I mean, I'm a music guy, so I don't know why I didn't pick rock star, but I feel like I'm in too deep at this point. I've got to where it is right now, but maybe I could change it up. We'll see.
Yeah. So the biggest thing I like about uploading native content to LinkedIn is the ability to upload captions files, .srt files, the LinkedIn video. So that, it's a really easy, convenient way to add subtitles. And so someone can enjoy your video without sound, which 80% of videos. And
actually, can you name that tool one more time? Just because I want to make sure, one, I capture it, because I have just started doing some subtitles on YouTube, but also so your audience can capture it, because I think there's like a statistic, like 90% of people listen to their videos like with the sound off. So like for anyone that's, is just kind of advice for anyone listening to the show that's starting to do videos or has been doing videos, like subtitles are critical right now. Because I mean, if I just think of my own behavior, like I rarely turn the sound on a video if I don't have to.
Yeah, that's a true point. Think of your own behavior, and it's so there's two ways to do it. There's a free way using YouTube. You upload to YouTube, and then they will automatically create captions files, which then you can go in and edit because it's about 90% right.
Right.
They also give you an option to just create a new file from scratch where you just manually transcribe it, and it'll auto set the timings of the captions. And all this I talk about in detail in the course that I'm launching. But basically you can go in when you have punctuation, it puts the captions onto, like, it'll put one sentence on each caption box. Whereas when it's automatically done by YouTube, it doesn't really know where one sentence starts and one sentence ends.
Right.
So that's one way to do it. The other way is I use rev.com. So once I upload to YouTube, I sync my YouTube account to my rev.com account. And I'll go and create an order. I'll select the YouTube videos that I want. And it's $1 per minute. A human will come in, transcribe them. It'll send the file back to YouTube from that point, which I can also review it. I'll download that and upload it with my video to LinkedIn. They turn it around in typically like 2 to 4 hours. But it's, it's within 24 hours guarantee.
Yeah, that's you said that's rev.com?
Yeah, rev.com.
Easy. All right. Well, I need that's been on my to-do list, making sure I make that more robust, because I've been taking the YouTube method that you were describing, which is, it's pretty good. You're right. It's like 90% of the way there when they do it. But, for $1 a minute, that is something I would love to outsource.
Yeah. It's been a huge thing for me. The biggest thing I found with the YouTube thing was just like, even if I went in and fixed all the words, it just wasn't on, like the punctuation wasn't right. And also they'll do like things like if you have music, they'll put in parentheses the music. And like I had one where someone was singing and they put like little musical notes. So it's like fully compliant with someone who like legitimately, like, let's say they're deaf, they can actually enjoy your content too without, they'll get the like laughs or coughs or, like all the additional things beyond just what we're saying.
Right. I found that the times I've used it, I've had to do, despite the fact that the words are 90% right, there is some like a good amount of editing that goes in there just to like split it up appropriately and get the punctuation in there, eliminate, things that are misinterpreted, I should say, and get all that correct. But just, I always like to let anyone know that's listening, don't let any of that stop you from starting. It's a pretty handy tool to have right off the bat. So if you're looking to get those first YouTube videos out with some subtitles below it, Zach and I have talked about, I think, a couple of pretty good ways to knock that out.
Yeah. And then the other one is canva.com, free online graphic design tool for creating online graphics like thumbnails, Instagram posts, quotes. You know, you can
I'm
even
a big Canva fan. I use that at least once a week, especially for like Instagram or trying to come up with a quick, good looking pictorial invitation for an event I might be hosting. Canva.com, another great resource for sure.
So in regards to video editing, what's your workflow like that on it? I forget what program are you using, and are you considering getting some editing help?
I do all so I'm still doing the one take videos for the most part. So I do all my editing in YouTube. I trim the start and the end of it right now.
That's super simple.
To what I've used when I've had to do actual editing, I usually outsource that right now because I might be operating off of a very old MacBook right now. So the theme of my March has been kind of an infrastructure upgrade, making sure I've got the right tools to get things done. Because I do want to do some heavier editing, and I do want to unlock that next category. But yeah, I've been keeping it simple. Like over probably 90% of the videos are still just like a one take. Pop it on YouTube, use the editor to trim the beginning and the end, and you're off to the races.
So yeah, man, that's the minimalist approach.
I'm curious, what are you using though? Because you do great videos, and you do like vlogs when you're traveling, like and you're able to crank them out pretty quickly. So I know this is your interview, but I do want to like give the audience like a substantial answer to that because you're doing a great job at it.
No, man, this isn't an interview. This is the podcast. We just chat like this. Yeah, I use iMovie, man. Believe it or not, everything I do, I've done on iMovie. There's been, I'll take that back, like 2 or 3 videos that I've done using Adobe Premiere Rush, mainly to take advantage of being able to export square videos. Mm-hmm. But yeah, man, everything's been done on iMovie. Even my most advanced vlogs, like the Australia one.
Yeah,
it can be done. It's actually really quick.
Yeah.
I don't know. I remember that whole vlog, like the 2-minute whatever vlog, took me like 3 or 4 hours. And there was actually one part that like 20 seconds of like really high speed frames. It took me just over an hour to do that one section.
Okay.
So whether or not there's faster, I think Final Cut Pro would actually be a nice upgrade for me, and it'll kind of be similar to iMovie, but it'll give me more features. And but the trackpad, it really is really nice on the MacBook, and so when you're swiping through the timeline, it's just really quick. And so everything I do is in iMovie, and eventually I might upgrade to Final Cut Pro.
That's what I've been on the fence for, because I used to use iMovie a long time ago when I was doing more, I shouldn't say more serious, because most of what I've done in video has not been too serious, but that has been the tool I've used as well too in the past. And then Final Cut Pro, I haven't been able to dabble in it yet, but again, we kind of talked about industry standards earlier. I feel like for a lot of people that's like the default video editor for some folks. But
there's good ones like Camtasia. And Camtasia or Premiere Pro, like that's a really good one, but the learning curve is kind of steep, and it also exports slower than a comparable system running on Mac with Final Cut. You can because it's so finely tuned. And this actually kind of brings up a good point of like closed closely coupled versus open loosely coupled systems, where like you look at the Mac ecosystem and you can kind of see where maybe I might be going with this scenario. But you have like the Mac and Final Cut Pro, and they're like basically finely tuned to work together. In fact, like it actually exports faster than like a PC running Adobe. But the other side is Adobe can run on Mac or Windows, and Adobe can maybe plug into more software. So you kind of have like that whole battle of the softwares, or battle of the giants ecosystem versus walled garden versus open systems. Yeah, so it's interesting.
Yeah. Yeah, I do need to highlight one other tool that I've used that's been helpful when I've filmed from like multiple camera angles before is a tool called Plural Eyes, I believe is what it's called, where it syncs your audio and video like with your like best audio with like different video angles and whatnot. So if you're trying to create let's say a scene or a video from multiple angles, that's been a tool that I've found to be helpful. And it's like $300 for it, I think. You can get a trial period on it if you just want to dabble around with it. But Pluralize is another tool that I got turned on to recently that I've found very helpful for video editing if you're doing things from a couple different vantage points.
Dope. Yeah, so this is something that I've asked a lot of the guests on the Zack Scriven podcast, Automation Month, and especially some of the other Rockwell employees.
Yeah.
Like John Fedor, who was a former Rockwell employee, Kyle, Mike Martinez.
Okay.
I asked them if Rockwell Automation was like a tech giant, like one of the major ones, who would they be and why?
Oh, wow. It's probably changed over just the past few years in terms of what I might have answered a few years ago and what I might answer now, because, we talked a little bit on the last time I was on the show. We just did the major investment in PTC so that we've got a true like IoT platform. And when this will come out in May, so it'll be a couple months in the rearview mirror. But as we're doing this interview, just a couple weeks ago, we announced a joint venture with Schlumberger called Sensia, where it's really being designed.
That's the first fully integrated oil and gas system, right?
Exactly, like an end-to-end digital oil field, really, at that point, which really doesn't exist today. Like, so it's, kind of in the same vein of PTC. We're creating a system or a platform, whatever we want to call it, where we're going to be able to really pull in these disparate systems and get information that, in the case of Sensia, we're talking about like reducing time to like from drilling to production, or optimizing well output, or extending the life of a well, like getting more of that digital information that's now available and teaming up with a company like Schlumberger. And, if you look at these type of things, these are really tangible investments where to overuse a term or a cliche, Rockwell's putting its money where its mouth is right now. So, I'm trying to think of a comparable tech giant that really, does what they say they're going to do. I don't know, it's, because, if I'm thinking tech giants, I'm thinking Tesla, Apple, Google, Facebook, probably
Amazon, Uber.
Based on this being a Bay Area guy and having a lot of friends in the area, maybe like a Facebook or a Google, because not only, I think all of these companies are pretty innovative. They're all, making investments to expand their footprint. But what I see, at least with my friends that are at some of these companies, there's a strong culture there and an inclusive culture. And I think one of the things that Rockwell has going for it is its really strong culture that people are proud to work for. People are proud to work there for a long time. People are excited when they get hired. New hires highlight the fact that Rockwell has a strong culture of expanding human possibility and collaboration when they're interviewing for their jobs. These are things that have become part of the Rockwell brand. So, I hate to give you a watered down answer where I really didn't compare us to any of the tech giants, but you know what? I'm going to give you, here's my answer. I like to think Rockwell is putting itself in the category with some of these tech giants right now. We're still industrial automation. We're a little ways off, but credit to Elon Musk for putting manufacturing back into popular culture and putting it into the eyes of, what a lot of people would view as a traditional tech company. I'm going to change my answer. I don't think Rockwell, I'm not going to compare us to one of the others. I think we're starting to work our way into the ranks of being able to be considered one of these tech giants.
Dude, you know what? I like your answer because Mike Martinez said the same thing, man. He said that Rockwell is its own. It's different to the market and it's its own entity. So yeah, I've heard other ones like
for you, but yeah, that's the best answer right now. Like I feel like I'm on that playing field right now with a lot of these people that I encounter in the Bay.
And he's a fresh Rockwell. He's been working there a few years, so he's been, pretty obviously openly happy and talking about it. And I met him at LinkedIn Local Milwaukee.
Oh,
But
cool.
I've heard some of the answers that I've heard is someone has compared it to Microsoft.
Okay.
So, and that kind of makes sense, like with your party of what's the word for your guys' partner network?
Oh, Encompass Partners,
Right. So from that
or we call
perspective,
it
you
our
kind of have
partner
like,
network. There are a couple interchangeable things. I like them. I mean, I like the Microsoft comparison. I think it's a company that it's huge, it's more established than, let's say, a Facebook or a Google. It's been around longer, but they've been able to evolve with the times. I think that's something that Microsoft and Rockwell would have in common.
yeah. So then I've also heard, I'd be interested to hear who you would have said a few years ago. How you said like today it's different than maybe a few years ago, which I want to expound upon that. But the ones I've heard is like, I mean, Apple, it does kind of make sense where you look at like the iPhone and you look at OS X and
Mm-hmm.
MacBooks. It's kind of like similar to if you like, let's say, take a ControlLogix PLC and Factory Talk View and Factory Talk Analytics. I know, which is kind of transitioned into ThingWorks and PTC, but kind of looked at that ecosystem. It was kind of very closed, like works only really best with itself, kind of like that walled garden
Mm-hmm.
effect. So, who would you have said a few years ago, though?
What I would have said a few years ago, I guess, again, I don't know who to compare it to, maybe, and I see where you're coming from with that walled garden. I think, what we're doing with PTC and the Sensia joint venture, I think we're showing that, hey, we need to pull some of these disparate systems together that aren't Rockwell. What I would have said a few years ago, and I'll be honest, the main reason I say this, and I don't think there's, I'm saying this all from a positive perspective. We had a leadership change at the CEO level. Keith Nosbush retired, and Blake Marette stepped in, who's our current CEO. And I think they both brought or are bringing the necessary strengths for the company to the table that Keith brought over the past decade, and that Blake is bringing moving forward. Keith was really an engineering-minded type guy, and the company had gotten to a size where we really needed to put some business processes in place and standard operating procedures. And Keith did a really good job of that, and then expanding the product portfolio to fill in some of the gaps that we had. Now at the same time, we were trying to make that transition from product centric to industry centric, and that hadn't necessarily fully happened under Keith. But when Blake came a couple of years ago, I mean, it's just been nonstop. Like the fact that we've seen the PTC partnership and the Sensia joint venture happen within really a 9-month period of one another. That is, for things that are as big as they are and have as much of an impact on our offering of the industry, see that happen within less than a year. That is a pace that I have not seen Rockwell move at before. And I think a lot of people would agree with that. And I think it's a really forward-thinking approach that what I love about it is it says, we've talked about all these things and we're going to keep doing it. And, I'm that same way on a small scale. If I talk about wanting to do something, I sure as heck better take action on it sometime soon after without over-analyzing it or over-planning it. That's not to say these things weren't analyzed and planned thoroughly. I have full confidence that took place. But what I mean is I love seeing the pace that we're moving at right now and the type of investments that are necessary to grow. That now that we've got our processes in place, like Blake's sales-oriented approach and action-oriented approach is really taking us to spots that I'm excited to see where things go in the next 2, 3, 4, 5, 10 years. It's going to be cool.
Oh man. Yeah. So you had Blake on the podcast or on Manufacturing Happy Hour, right?
I did. Yeah. I had Blake, I guess that was about a year ago. Yeah. We, and it's just another thing, another feather in his cap that he's done. He started the Academy of Advanced Manufacturing and that's what he jumped on the show to talk about. And that's training veterans in advanced manufacturing roles, because there's a skills gap in the workforce. There aren't as many people going to these technical roles. And talk about a type of person that knows how to think under pressure, knows how to solve problems, would be a great fit for the manufacturing industry. And he's giving veterans those opportunities by training them up and then helping align our customers with that type of talent for their team. So he jumped on the show to talk about the Academy of Advanced Manufacturing. Again, it's, quite frankly, kind of unbelievable to think about all the big things that Blake has been working on since his time in there. But you know what? He's the culture he's establishing is infectious. So there are a lot of people throughout the whole organization that are playing a big role in making some of these things happen. So, but yeah, I need to get Mr. Marette back on the show at some point. I feel like we'd have a few more things to talk about since Blake.
Do you have any influence over that?
What's that?
Do you have any influence over being able to make that happen?
I mean, I'm just a small guy in the company, Zach. Like I'm an account manager that just happens to know how to use a camera. But it might be worth the phone call at some point.
Because then we could ask him if there's any plans for Rockwell and their products and hardware and software to support like open IIoT protocols like MQTT with Sparklet B.
Okay.
Do you think that would be something that Rockwell would do?
I have a feeling if we were calling up, we'd probably want to ask Blake a different question. He might just someone else in the organization. But we could theorize on what Rockwell may or may not do technical standpoint. And I have those conversations, it seems like on a daily basis. There's so many different things we could do. I still, Rockwell is going to continue to be very Ethernet IP focused, but with our partners, we've got quite a bit of flexibility to move beyond that, I should say.
Yeah. I love Rockwell, and everything that we talk about is obviously in good spirit. And even Walker, who he has kind of made a lot of videos about, dogging Rockwell over their platforms and business practices, and just trying to lead them in the right direction. And but it's he even says himself, like, I love Rockwell, I love their PLC, they make the best PLC, and they great software, just some of their business practices, which it sounds like it's starting to already change, with the
I think because when we're talking Walker, I think because he's really promoting the system of the future too, where it's very much platform agnostic as best as it can be. So and for his business, that totally makes sense. But I've heard him say some good things about us too, for sure.
Yeah.
I think once he saw what that partnership actually looked like, he's like, all right, okay, I'll give him some credit on this.
Yeah.
I'm glad to see we're even giving the doubters some things that show it's like, all right, they know what they're doing.
Yeah, it's funny. I look at the analytics, and there was actually like 40 to 50 Rockwell people that were watching all of Walker's videos. So we kind of built up a little Rockwell audience, and so shout out to anyone from Rockwell if you guys are listening. You guys
I know who one of those guys is. That's me. So I'm one of those 40 or 50. But I would hope there are plenty of other people watching those videos, because the last thing anyone wants to do is bury their head in the sand and just pretend that Rockwell's the only game in town, because we're not. And I one of the things I like about all this content that's out there now is we can get access to that, and we can understand where our gaps are, where some of the misperceptions are around what we're doing. So it's been nice having that ability as well too.
Yeah. And he said in this last podcast we talked about, it's like, there's plenty of companies that I don't like, but I don't talk about them or bash them on the podcast. He says, if I'm talking about you, it's a good thing,
Yeah, no, for sure. Like there's no point to, I'm in the same boat. Like if there's a solution I don't like or whatever it is, like I'm not going to dignify it by talking about it negatively. I'd rather just leave that off. I mean, me, Zach, I'm kind of more of like a glass half full positive person. So I'm going to try to highlight things that are good, and if I don't have anything good to say, I'm just not going to say it.
Yeah. So the other company that I also heard, or you could kind of make a similar comparison to with Rockwell, is like the Amazon. Kind of from the perspective that Amazon, kind of starting to take over everything, and so you could kind of look at it like Rockwell. They first were your PLC, now they're your software supplier and your integrator, and pretty much maybe next thing they're going to be owning the manufacturing facilities, and Rockwell will just own everything.
I mean, I don't know if we're taking over the same way that Amazon's taking over. I like the fact that there's some kudos being thrown our way that we are, we're able to do kind of those end-to-end solutions like you're talking about. But I don't know, and I don't know about I feel like the culture at Amazon might be a little different from ours too. Although I can't really make a claim around that. But I wonder. That is another interesting comparison in terms of our, the way we're expanding and whatnot. So, but I don't think you're going to be seeing a Rockwell controller delivered on your doorstep within, 2 hours of ordering from Rockwell Prime, for lack of a better word, anytime soon. So I think Amazon still has a few more fingers into our daily lives than you're going to see Rockwell ever have.
Dope. Yeah. So, speaking of, Rockwell PLC showing up on your door from Rockwell Prime, like, how do you see the future of distribution within manufacturing?
Well, distribution's evolving, and distribution is certainly smart enough to know that if they don't find a way to increase their digital presence, I mean, they're going to get eaten up over time. And that's why they're really moving to kind of some, they're providing some services to complement the products that they have. They are increasing their digital web presence. I don't see, especially for a highly technical product like a controller automation, I don't think you're going to see distribution disappear, anytime soon if they continue to stay ahead of the curve and try to integrate into the digital offerings that, where they see pressure from Amazon. Now, that said, if a distributor does not get on board with that and they just kind of, keep their head in the sand and hope things go the way that they always have, then that would strike me as a surefire path to, getting eaten up by the way just the world's digital presence is going. But the reality is we, at Rockwell, we collaborate closely with our distributors. And I'm really just speaking about Rockwell distributors at this point. And knowing the leadership at those spots, knowing their local presence, and, knowing that they have to be more than just a box supplier at this point, I feel confident that they're going to be around for quite a while. I don't see that changing anytime soon.
Okay. Interesting. So one of the things that I had kind of talked about and, was the concept of geographical areas for distributors versus, like in the digital realm that doesn't hold as much weight as it did before, especially if your stuff's getting shipped. Perhaps could be cheaper to ship something from some massive warehouse in like Dallas than from a distributor 30 miles away, because like it's 2 hours away in LA traffic, and it could just fly right into Ontario. And, I mean, I don't know, like kind of moving more towards like less away from a geographical area for distributors to one that's more of like expertise based, or one that's more like of a where people can compete against being that distributor. Like how do you see that changing?
Yeah, so good point. And again, this is a highly theoretical conversation for both of us, because as we see with any technology, like something could come up in the next 3 to 5 years that could completely shoot everything we're talking about out the door. But I do think you're right. Geographies are becoming, quite frankly, a little less important just in the way the world operates now. And let's say you're having a drone deliver a controller, and you're talking about LA traffic versus, another method. Like, there might be cheaper, quicker ways to get it that way. I will say, I guess the one thing I'm seeing is there is some natural consolidation taking place within distribution. Like we're seeing, the larger, for example, like McNaught McKay, Rexel, some of those big names in distribution, they're starting to acquire some of the smaller local ones while keeping that local presence. But, it's not the same, from 10 years ago where you had local mom and pop distributor here, local mom and pop distributor here, and all over. And then you just had, you had some CEDs, you had some Rexels. We're starting to see that consolidate a bit more. And that's, I don't think that's really a surprise to anyone. That's just kind of the way times have evolved. So, I like your thought around that. Whereas the lines get blurred, and like your Ontario versus LA example, like yeah, I could see some things continuing to evolve in that capacity, and I've already seen some of those, acquisitions and consolidations take place. But
Yeah.
again, it's I think too early for me to theorize what the overall impact distribution might be in the next, let's say, decade or so. But what does get me excited is seeing that distributors are taking action to say, all right, the world's not the same as it was 10 years ago, so what do we need to do to stay relevant? And a lot of that has to do with being more than just a part supplier, finding ways to add value to solutions, services, the plant. They're doing all the right things that are within their control right now.
Mm-hmm. Right. So, Walker, how he's kind of building the integrator of the future. He's also launched this new company called 4.0 Solutions, and he's kind of building the distributor of the future. So it's kind of what we were talking about, where he's going to have a network of integrators and a network of hardware and technology and software solutions. And he's going to recommend the best solutions, from an agnostic perspective for whatever customers are looking for. Industry 4.0, digital factories. And so the network of integrators that he's going to work with, it's all going to be referred based on who's best at that technology, and not necessarily who's closest. I mean, that could be one consideration, but yeah, it's pretty interesting, and it's cool to be kind of helping him build that with my, doing the content. And
yeah, I've been excited to watch what Walker is up to. He's certainly a big personality that's taken action, like, in this space, to keep track of, like, and the fact that the content is so consistent, like, as far as I'm concerned, if people aren't paying attention to folks like Walker, they're doing themselves a disservice right now to see, okay, we've got these new opportunities in front of us. How are people capitalizing on it? Because we live in a world where we can easily learn from one another's. And this kind of goes back to the what we started on with Manufacturing Happy Hour. I'm trying to bring more people together. I guess, at some point I need to go to Dallas and get Walker to one of these dinners I'm talking about, and just, give everyone an opportunity to learn from him, and, hopefully bring some folks that Walker picks up, some points, a couple points from as well too. Cause he strikes me as someone that's really putting the investment in learning, which I hope a lot of people out there are right now, because if they're not, there's these opportunities, the opportunities that exist today might not be the same ones that are there a year out or 2 years out. It's going to move very, very quickly.
I definitely think Walker would be down for that. The relationship between Walker and, Rockwell and PTC actually is getting a lot closer. PTC, someone from PTC actually reached out to Walker to potentially do some speaking at, LiveWorks in 2020.
LiveWorks. Wow, they're already planning out 2020. Okay, all right. that's I think LiveWorks is in Boston in June. I think it's coming up quick.
That's where you guys announced the PTC partnership, I believe.
It was TechEd. It was actually, I think both of them were like occurring at the same time. I think LiveWorks was taking place right around that same time, and Rockwell's big TechEd event in San Diego last year was taking place that same time. But yeah, that was no small announcement by any means. So hopefully, I would think it wouldn't surprise me if Walker has a PTC success story under his belt sometime soon, and having an opportunity to talk about it at LiveWorks. Because anytime I see one of my customers executing on something cool or something innovative, I want to make sure I give them an opportunity to jump on stage as quickly as possible to highlight that, whether it's at TechEd or another type of event.
Yeah. And the secondary part that's kind of cool from that is now I'll probably most likely get to go to that event too, with Zack Scriven Media. And I had kind of wanted to go to the one last year, but it just didn't quite work out. And now I'll be able to go to that. Maybe I'm going to even go to the one this year.
I've been trying to figure out if I'm making it to that one as well too, because that is one I want to see. I know I could get a boatload of good content there as well too, and learn a lot in the process also. So I have a feeling you and I will be crossing paths at one of these shows coming up soon.
So with the convergence of IT and OT, do you see potential merger between one of the large industrial tech companies with the other tech companies like a Microsoft and a Viva, or Amazon and Rockwell? Like, what do you see? Do you see that happening?
Wow, that's a big one. I don't, I'll be honest, I don't see that happening quite yet. I think we're going to need to wait to see how things evolve. I do think we're going to see more partnerships come up like we're seeing right now. That's, if what we're seeing between Rockwell and PTC, what we're seeing with the joint venture between Rockwell and Schlumberger. I don't know. And again, I'm no Amazon or I'm no Microsoft. They're much larger and they're probably thinking of things a little differently. I just don't know if it almost seems like it is a little too dissimilar right now for one of them to be like, I'm going to buy one of you today. Like, I feel like most, I don't quite see it being there yet. But like we were talking about with distribution and the way, geographies are starting to blur a little bit. I don't think that type of conversation would be out of the question.
Right. Because with AI, with big data, I mean, at some point, let's just take Aviva, for example. They partner with Microsoft. I mean, you guys partner with Microsoft too, let's say. So you guys are using, the Azure cloud solutions. And, let's say you have a historian product that, stores data for your clients, right? I mean, at some point, the value of their business is, it's like Microsoft effectively starting to own all that data, and like they're using the AI algorithms. At some point, it might make sense for them to kind of acquire a company like Rockwell to expand their IoT offerings, and selling the value of that data is where the business ends up going.
Yeah, I hear everything you're saying. I do think, down the line, that's certainly a possibility. I do think it's a little early, but I look forward to looking at this interview like 2 or 3 years later, just to find out what I was right about and what I was totally wrong about.
Right. Because eventually, what if you kind of paint yourself in a corner by going with the Azure cloud solutions, where, at some point with billions of devices connected, you're storing so much data that you effectively can't even build at some point you might even have to build your own data center to compete with them, because otherwise they own everything,
Yeah, it's interesting to see how the industrial horror. I mean, just with it's a lot of it has to do with IT OT convergence, I think, and just how that's come together. How data is really the name of the game in a lot of these spaces right now. Yeah, you're right. Those are. I mean, we've got some interesting things to consider of what could happen in the space right now.
I mean, YouTube and
on things I've got control of at the moment. If Microsoft wants to buy us, that's something that is way out of my realm of responsibility right now. So the best I can do is keep doing my thing.
That'd be a good problem to have. I was going to say YouTube and LinkedIn kind of have me by the balls, because all my content is distributed through those two platforms. And it's, it's funny because you look at Microsoft with acquiring LinkedIn, you might think that, that's a social network. That's kind of more of a Facebook or a, Instagram, which Facebook acquired. So now Microsoft is kind of expanding its social network, kind of competing against, LinkedIn or YouTube a little bit, because now they're having betaing LinkedIn Live, and LinkedIn Video is huge. So it's kind of it's interesting to see that, but also at the same time scary that we're kind of at the will of those companies that own that data.
Yeah, and I kind of I've thought about that too, and that's one thing I try to do in my day-to-day, and this has something to do with going to speak at the conference in Orlando coming up for PodFest. Like, there's a difference between being an influencer and being influential. So I think influencers, for example, like on Instagram, you can go on Instagram and you can have 25,000 followers on Instagram, but if Instagram disappeared, like, that person wouldn't be anyone at that point. There are a lot of people that are just purely single platform dependent, and at the end of the day, you need to have some platform dependency. Like, you want, like, I double down on LinkedIn too. Like, I think LinkedIn's a great tool. It's great for the industry we're in. I try to balance that as well with like YouTube and then some Facebook and other social media presence. But yeah, I've got my eggs in just a couple baskets as well. But one thing that I think anyone can do is just make sure they're practicing their ability to influence on a regular basis as well. And that's primarily like in person, and helping people understand what you're all about, what your brand is about, what your values are, what your work ethic is, what your strengths that you bring to the table are. And I think, by default of, let's say the example of you and I creating videos, people get to see that. So if LinkedIn were to disappear tomorrow, like, yeah, that would suck. But at the same time, I wouldn't feel like I had lost, like, my ability to make an impact at this point. I'd still know where there were ways to reach people. And, you hear people talk about it all the time. That's why you want to build up an email list as well. So that way you've got kind of that, that platform that is not going to disappear at any point. You have that direct link to contact. So yeah, it's one of those things I think anyone that's out there creating a brand, creating content needs to be cognizant of. It's like, you want to pick your platforms where you have your strengths, but at the same time recognize that platform, as big as they may seem today, might not be there tomorrow, within a year, whatever that time frame is.
Yeah. You made a really good argument for podcasts, in that anyone who subscribed to your podcast, you'll know that they'll get your content. Whereas on YouTube or LinkedIn, you're kind of at the mercy of the algorithm, unless someone kind of goes out of their way to specifically seek out your content.
And if you can create content that's influential, again, not being an influencer, but being like influential, like, you stand a better chance of someone being that type of person that seeks out their content, like people do with, Gary Vaynerchuk, for example. People seek it out and they share it on his behalf. Like, a lot of, he still has to do the social media strategies, don't get me wrong, but he's got a lot of organic shares and some hardcore followers. So if you can achieve that level of influence, then you protect yourself from some of the things that could happen should one of these platforms go down the tube.
Dope, man. All right, automation influencers, let us know what you guys thought about the podcast. And Chris, thank you for being on. Do you have a call to action?
Call to action today. Yeah, I would say my call to action would be subscribe to Manufacturing Happy Hour on YouTube. I know that's kind of the old school, but that's still where all the videos are going. That's a great place to stay engaged with me for conversations. You can find me on LinkedIn as well, but subscribe on YouTube. It's if you search for Manufacturing Happy Hour, that's going to be the first thing that pops up. So hop on there and we should be good.
Dope, man. Chris, thank you again. And I look forward to having you on the third annual Automation Month for Zack Scriven Podcast in 2020. And we can see, how ridiculous our, speculations were.
Yeah, no kidding. We covered some ground in this one. I look forward to chatting with you again on the show, likely within another year. And I'm sure you and I will be crossing paths sometime in between now and then as well.
All right. We'll see you, man. Peace.
Cool. Thanks a bunch.